Hey everybody. It's me, your host, Calvin Logan, with the Logan Power Show, nationwide, worldwide. I know that you all are watching this, and we thank you for watching us here today. This is a special segment here in the Logan Power Show. I know it's election time, but we want to focus on some things that outside the presidency, which is really important. I don't know about you, but you got to know all offices that do affect us here. So I'm here to got a special guest here. She is running for sheriff in the Charleston County area. She's going against a heavyweight. It's David versus Goliath actual election. And she's the one and only running for sheriff here at Charleston County, Mrs. Kristin Graziano. How you doing, ma'am?
Hey, Calvin, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, they call it a David versus Goliath battle. It's a heavyweight division. The reason why I'm saying that your opponent, Mr. Al Cannon's been in office since 1988, 32 years, got his own detention center named after him, the Al Catch Detention Center. You have constantly told people that you want change here in Charleston County if selected as be sheriff. Being a woman sheriff is also a very monumental moment for people, women who haven't had the opportunity of power. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running.
Well, thank you, Cal, for that beautiful introduction. But you did say a couple things that, yeah, monumental indeed. When I'm elected, and I'm not sure if I'm David at this point. I'm going to go with Goliath. But when I'm elected, I'll be the first woman ever in the history of the state of South Carolina to be elected to this position. So it's even more important now for me to remain focused on. Yeah, I've been the first in a lot of things in my career, but it's important for me not to be the last. And I think that's the mission I have going forward. But thank you so much for inviting me. And again, I'm Kristin Graziano. As Calvin was saying, I am the Democratic candidate for sheriff in Charleston County. I have served my community for over 3 decades, since 1988. In fact, when the current sheriff became sheriff or came into Charleston County. My law enforcement experience is quite extensive, but most of my work has actually kept me in direct contact with the communities that I've served, whether those communities were in a neighborhood, in a school, on a boat, in a courthouse, on a bike, a motorcycle, a car. I've done it all. So I've been out there, boots on the ground for over 3 decades serving my community. Just a little bit about, I told you about first. I was the longest serving and only senior element leader for SWAT, and served as assistant commander for SWAT in Virginia. I have about 23 years service in that capacity. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a master's in business administration. And I'm, essentially running because I believe we're in a critical time for much needed reform that should have happened a long time ago. And I have a really bold vision for progress, and I will lead that charge, Calvin.
Absolutely. Now you mentioned reform. Charleston County is not always the always proactive when it comes to reform. It's always not always the case. What are some things, if given the opportunity to become the first female sheriff of Charleston County, what reform would you try to look in if you changed on day one?
So we are in a unique position. You mentioned earlier, you're monitoring elections from president down to the local elections. In local elections, we have the ability to have immediate impacts on our community. And part of that impact, and what I've been preaching since the day, and I'll go back to when we started our campaign in early March, but I actually left my job in February when my opponent learned that I might be running against him. He let me go. So I had been saying then, and I'm still saying, that we need bold reforms in our law enforcement practices. We need a guide. We need to know how we're doing, how we measure up. Look, every study that I've seen and every study that's been published has shown that there is implicit bias in policing practices. Everything shows that. A study just came out a couple weeks ago from Harvard, and they did a study in Massachusetts, the state of Massachusetts, and they were doing specifically marijuana arrests. It was a big study they did, and they could not find any other thing but race to determine the way that the laws were being enforced against the Black community versus everybody else. And the only, there was no reasonable explanation other than race in this study. And it just, but we hear it time and time again. We know in Charleston County, through CJCC, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, we know through their study and through their statistics that they've been keeping for several years that it exists. So we need to admit that it exists and we need to fix it. So there are a lot of things that we need to do, but the beauty of I can come in with fresh eyes, having knowing how this agency works, and we can start with us. I mean, first you have to admit there's a problem in order to change it, right? So if we don't admit there's a problem, there's no way we can fix it. So we get audits done, financial and racial bias, and we analyze the data, and then we go forward. We progressively go forward and fix the problems that exist. We start with policy and procedure. We start with training, and we immediately start with our recruitment and commit to inclusion and diversity, because people don't want just cops patrolling their neighborhoods. They want people engaged with their neighborhoods, that look like their neighborhoods, that speak the language of their neighborhoods, that understand the culture of those neighborhoods. And it's just simply inexcusable that we in Charleston County have a Black population, almost 30%, and we have less than 18% in the sheriff's office that serve that in that capacity. It's just, there's no excuse, and we have to fix it. So we have to start with with us, and then we branch out and we build relationships. And there's just too much division right now.
Got it. Absolutely. So first thing, like we were talking about, is changing the laws is one of how things are done. Then changing the tactics. Then you're talking about hiring, and now that is something that is, I think, is not always talked about all the time. The reason I'm saying that, we talk about reform, but now let's talk about hiring people who look like us, who may be part of the neighborhood. Now, a lot of times when it comes to, this is just the rebuttal, if you have an officer in X, Y, and Z neighborhood, number one, either officer doesn't live in the neighborhood, number two, or part A, can't afford to live in the neighborhood. So what are some things what we would do to bridge that gap, and also the trust factor? Because let's be truthful, because there's been so much a transition of the tone has been so I would say negative, and it's always not a positive tone. What would be what we got, sort of like, I guess, the language being given, since the community as whole is not really trusting, like, oh yeah, if I give you the opportunity, what are you going to do different? Like, we heard that speech before. What is the trust factor? How we're going to bridge that gap? Because it's always we want to do reform, and that's a great thing, but some things it's not easier said than done, because some people are still stuck in their ways, based off of your opponent. He's been in office 32 years. People just electing the person based off name recognition, not even taking a look and seeing their history. What do they stand for? They're just going for, because you've been in there so long, so I'm going to roll with the punches, roll with the same good old boy system. So what are some things? How can we make a difference there?
Yeah. So yeah, you're right on so many things. There's a lot in there. So I'll start with the money part of that too. I think that's important to understand. Charleston County is one of the most expensive counties to live in the state, actually in the East Coast. It's about 3% higher from where I came from in Charlottesville, Virginia, which was also very high. So when I came here, I remember taking a huge pay cut just to do, because I wanted quality of life. I moved here for quality of life and because I love this area. But so we have to, you said laws need to be changed and all these things need to happen. But what we can do internally is when we start recruiting people that look like the community, and we offer incentives to bring them into the community. Because you're right, so many of our people that patrol this area don't live in Charleston County. They can't afford it. So we have to offer financial incentives, by fixing the pay scale. We are still below the national rate for Charleston County, even though they just did a pay study and they took away the education incentive, which I think is ridiculous. But they took away any incentive to raise the pay scale across the board, but it's still below the national average. But then they de-incentivized education. So it makes no sense to me. So we've got to fix the pay. We've got to fix the ability for people to make a decision in those communities. So I am a community policing person. I was one of the first graduates of the Virginia Community Policing Institute in the 90s. We, pioneered changing neighborhoods by empowering the neighborhoods and working with the communities. And there are a lot of really successful agencies around the country that do that. We don't do it here in Charleston. And I'm not sure why we don't do it here, because it is one single thing that you can do to build that trust with not just your law enforcement, but with your youth. I want our guys policing the community and serving them beyond the call, which means if they call you because a dog is barking, then you handle that, you take care of it. But if they say, I can't get to the store because I need to bake a cake and I can't get to the store, my car broke down, then you solve the problems. You help solve the problems, because that's what neighbors do. And I've said this before, we are so effective when we're on basketball courts and tennis courts and baseball fields and out of criminal courts. We are more effective working with the people in the community because they build that trust and they have that mutual respect. We're terrible about treating people with dignity and respect and equality as a not us personally, but our career. I mean, we get targeted by, because somebody does something really dumb, and it affects all of us because we all wear the uniform. And so we've got to break through that stereotype. I mean, there is no reason that you or your neighbor shouldn't have the phone number of the person that patrols that neighborhood if they have a question that they can help them with, and call them directly. There's no need to call 911 for something like that. We need to put our people off their laptops, off their computers, off of their cell phones, and in the neighborhoods, working with these neighborhoods. We need to give them the ability to make decisions and empower them to solve problems. And that's what we're going to do. And it's going to be, look, the bias policing that has occurred over my 30-year career throughout the country was intentional. We know that. We know that from statistics. So to reverse that, we have to be intentional. We have to intentionally go to these neighborhoods, and we need to fix the problems that partially we created.
Absolutely. Now, the biggest thing, are you a proponent of second chances? The reason why I'm asking second chances, when it comes to the jails, Alcan detention center is like a fast food restaurant, and there's a high 89%, 90% are males, 10% is mostly our females. But if you dig a little deeper into that, maybe at least 60, 70% is African-American, Latinos, repeated defenders. And it's even higher than that, excuse me. Yeah. And then the repeat that defenders are people that are petty crimes. And the ones that are some very severe crimes, we're not really addressing those like we should. Like I said, I'm not saying that, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, give you a second chance. But I'm saying there are things in place that I've literally seen people get locked up. And then what happens is they can't call a family member. It's impossible. Like you get that one collect call. They say that one collect call doesn't go through. Now you're in the system where you got to wait till your court date. Court date could be a week, could be a month, could be 6 months. So you think about if you were a law-abiding citizen, say you made a simple error and you lost your job. There's no way to contact your job. There's no way for someone to know, hey, can I find my family member? And the getting in contact with them can be very expensive if you're not willing to drive up to Alcan and to see that family member. And it seems to me like a money game system when you think about the the calling cards to be able to make calls, the food that's overpriced. There's so many things. It's like, man, you make more money locking these people up than really reforming them to do be a better person and not come back here again. I believe that's just my personal belief. I don't know how you think about that, but that's the reason why I mean by second chances. Because what it's seen that most times is that we don't give second chances unless you know somebody to give you that second chance. Like if you knew somebody who was connected to that person, or you had a great lawyer, then yeah, you're coming out. But in most times, it's not the case.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've uh, paid attention to any of the forums that I've done, but back in the 90s, I was on a board called Offender Aid and Restoration. That was a pilot project in Virginia. And what that did, we worked on pretrial intervention and post-conviction release from prisons, jails. We have a jail. We need to be very clear about that in Charleston County. We have a jail, not a prison, although it is run like a prison. You're absolutely right. So what is a jail? It's a temporary holding facility for somebody who's potentially dangerous to the community or has committed a crime, right? What is a prison? A prison is punishment. They put people away after they've been convicted. So they're very, very different. But we put them in jail, try them here in Charleston County before they're even convicted, and we criminalize it. I mean, we punish them. Part of that is cash bail system, and and I'm going to link all this together. The cash bail system criminalizes poverty because people that are unable to afford bail are detained while they await trial, like you said, for weeks or even months. And cash bail perpetuates the inequities in our justice system. They're disproportionately felt by communities of color and those experiencing poverty. And that's just simply not fair. So we need to address that. Legislatively, we need to address that. We already have the ability, Calvin, to not impose cash bails on people. That's done at the magistrate level. Unfortunately, we have so much we don't train our deputy sheriffs and police officers enough to realize that when you incarcerate a person, you incarcerate the family. Because if you take that breadwinner out of the family, the domino effect it can have could be devastating, even if they're there for a weekend. That could be feeding their family for a week. So it has this devastating effect. So we need to educate our people that have the ability to put people in jail versus write them a ticket, and have them understand that if they're not a danger to the public, there's really no reason to put a cash bail on somebody when you can just write them a citation and say, I'll see you in court and we'll figure this out. Am I a fan of second chances? I'm a fan of second, third, fourth, fifth. I don't care how many times it takes, because statistics have shown that up to the age of 27, Calvin, your brain is still developing. So we still have the ability to affect change in somebody's behavior. So how do we do that? So we target those individuals that come into our facility between the ages of up to the age of 27. We target them and we start with education. Education over incarceration. I will preach it till the day I die. I believe it. It's something that you'll never be able to take away from somebody, is giving them that education. Give them the opportunity to have an education. Because once they get that education, they can do now other things. Well, we have to work on lifting people up and not pushing them down. And when we talk about crime and putting people in jail for nonviolent offenses and criminalizing broken taillights and all, marijuana and all that nonviolent stuff, when you start doing that, when you start criminalizing those things, it's disproportionately felt by communities of color. We know that from those statistics. So we have to reverse course. Like I said, it has to be purposeful. We have to educate people, including our own people, as to what effects that you writing somebody a ticket can have on their lives. We just sent out a flyer or mailing not too long ago, and it said, you know, have you ever met a deputy sheriff that has never written a speeding ticket? And why? I have never written a speeding ticket, and I purposely have not. Doesn't mean I haven't stopped people from speeding, and it doesn't mean I haven't written them for something else. But the bottom line is I understand when I talk to people on the side of the road and hear their circumstances, because I engage them. I mean, we're humans, right? You know, I make mistakes too. So that's my job, I think, is to educate them. I understand the effects that a speeding ticket can have on a young person's life going forward. It has effects on their ability to get insurance, their ability to pay for that insurance, their ability to feed their families if they have to choose over food versus insurance, the ability to keep their car running. I mean, I understand all that. So it is, but I'm probably the exception to the rule because we don't train like that. So I think adding that human element in our training so that people understand that. And the other thing is there is a direct correlation between crime and poverty. So when you lift people out of poverty, you reduce the crime. So when I talk about restorative practices, it starts with education. When those individuals come into between that range, that 16 or up to the age of 27, we focus on restorative practices and we give them the ability to get work. I'm working with the United Electrical Workers Association and another for our male and female people to target individuals like that, to put them in high-paying jobs, starting out apprenticeship jobs, starting out $15, $16 an hour. It's not a lot, but it's more than probably what they were making, you know, before they got there. But at the end of that apprenticeship, they could make $40, $50, $60 an hour just by having that license that you can't take away from them. But in the meantime, they're getting benefits paid for. They're getting, they don't have to pay anything. They're getting a retirement paid for. Everything's being paid for, and they're getting a check, and they're learning how to, a skill or a trade. And I think that's critical because, you know, in Charleston County, we closed the trade schools for the high schools. Not everybody's college material. Not everybody wants to go to college. But we closed those schools, and now the opportunity for young adults is not there. And it's impossible for them to go out and make minimum wage and then try to put themselves through a trade school that is very expensive. We've targeted an international company that based out of North Charleston. They want our women inmates. They want our female inmates to do marketing and IT work. And they will train them 100% and pay them very high-paying jobs. But they want to do that because they want to build partnerships because they understand the value of lifting people out of poverty. You know, our legislature, our elected officials know this, yet we fail to fund education appropriately. We fail to fund healthcare. We fail to fund housing. I mean, and we know those are direct link between crime and poverty. But we still don't get it. We still don't fund. So when I say do audits of our financial practices, we need to figure out how we're spending our money and how we can better serve our community.
Absolutely. Final thought. We always want to ask, what made you want to get into law enforcement? Due to the fact, and if you think in the 80s, that's not always the dream job for everybody, but it's got to be a passion, willing to serve. So what it made you want to say, I want to get in law enforcement, I want to serve the people?
Yeah, you're gonna cut to the heart here. Calvin, back when I was a young teenager, I lived with my grandmother over the summer. We would work at the Chesapeake Bay. My uncle had a charter boat, so I would work on the boats, and I learned to fish, and I was pretty self-sufficient. But I spent my summers on the Chesapeake Bay, just fishing, making money, helping my mother. My mother lived in public housing, and so that was my escape in the summer to go. And in one summer, my sister was abducted and went missing for several days. So my family didn't tell me about it right away because I only have one sister. It's my younger sister. I have 6 brothers, but my family didn't tell me right away. And then after a few days, they sent my uncle over to where I was, and he told me, and I remember trying to get on my little John boat on the beach and push it out in these crashing waves to go find my sister. Of course, I didn't get off the beach. The waves were too big, and I was pretty little, and my boat was, not going to survive that. And I couldn't drive my boat on the road. The water wasn't going to take me to her, but in my head, I had to be there, and that was my only escape. So eventually, I made it back home, and about 5 days later, these two officers that were on patrol looking for her in Charlottesville located a car in a park. And my sister told me after the fact that she said, when I saw the police car in the parking lot, she caught a glimpse of it. She knew that was her chance to get away, because she knew that was her only chance. He was holding her at knife point at that point. So she made a run for it. They identified her pretty quickly. They knew who she was. They'd been looking for her, and they took this guy into custody. And it was the aftermath. My sister telling me that, and I grew up in public housing, so that was my first experience with the police, and it was a positive one for her, a positive outcome. I'm not saying everyone. That was our experience, but I had this incident. Really, you learn to deal with it. You don't really get over it, and it really it devastated my family, and we just went. It wasn't easy. We didn't have the resources to deal with it like that we probably should have had. We tried to stay strong as a family, and it really just tore my family up. And to this day, it still affects us. But it was a good 10, 12 years later that I was able to call those guys my partners, those two officers. That I had vowed from that point, when my sister told me that I would never let another family go through what my family went through, because it was devastating. After that, I left home. I was on my own at the age of 16. I finished high school on my own. I had my own apartment. I worked 3 jobs and put myself through college. So I just couldn't be with my family anymore, because that wasn't the life that I wanted for myself, and we just weren't functioning like we needed to. It was devastating. So that's what drew me to law enforcement. It was a commitment that I made at that point, not to allow anyone else to go through what we had gone through, and I've been doing it ever since.
Amen. Amen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you just heard live here at the Logan Power Show, Miss Kristin Graziano. Her website again is KristinForSheriff2020.com. Once again, KristinForSheriff2020.com. That's KristinFor Sheriff SHERIFF 2020.com. You'll see her information available to you. That way you have a better understanding. Ladies and gentlemen, November the 3rd is right around the corner. You have to make a decision who you feel as be capable of protecting you, not just your home, but your community. These things, these local officials, these electorals that we put in the office, they don't just affect your family, but they affect the whole community as a whole. So you want to make sure you make the right person your choice. It's between her and Mr. Al Cannon. You make your decision who you want to go with. I believe this. Do your homework, look up these people, see what they're doing. Ms. Kristin Graziano, we want to thank you so much for coming on. You didn't have to, but we appreciate you just giving us your time and your patience.
Logan, thank you so very much. And let's keep this conversation going. It's so important to get our communities talking to each other again. And we have much work to do. And I know I cannot do it alone. I'm not naive enough to think that. But I want to mention something real quick.
Sure.
The last 26 days of this race, we are running literally a marathon. So for the last, it's been 11 days now. So today's mile 12. for the last 11 days, we've been running 1 mile in a different district every day, involving the community in our run. And it has been amazingly so much fun. So tonight we are running downtown on Hampton Park at 6 p.m. We'll start the run at 6 p.m. We gather at 5:30. And then if you check my website, every day until the election day, we're going to a different district. So this is I think that we have one more run downtown, and then we move over to James Island and then West Ashley, where I will sprint to the polls from my house, that 0.2 miles on November 3rd. My campaign has always been about inclusion in the community. This is about the community, and we want everyone to join us. Bring your wheels, bring your skateboards, bring your skates. We even had a wheelchair join us like a couple of days ago. My oldest participant's been 82 years old. My youngest has been 2. So we're reaching everybody. It's a blast. We're social distancing. We do have masks and gaiters for people to wear if you don't bring them. Yeah, we are being safe about it, and it's just been so much fun. And we want people to come out and join us and get healthy, get our minds and our bodies healthy.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's mind, body, and soul. You want to get your spirit together. So we pray that this will be a blessed time for everyone who comes out to run. Like I say, again, it's all about knowing the information. So the information begin with the Logan Power Show. We're here to bless y'all. Go to our website today, www.theloganpowershow.us. Hey, if you want to be a guest, email us. Definitely, you want to donate to our show, follow us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Know that we come on Comcast, channel 230 on WLCN network, channel 230 we're on Spectrum as well. So we are here to make a difference. I thank y'all for watching us. And this is all the time I got. My name is Calvin Lowe, the Logan Power Show, nationwide, worldwide. And we're here to make a difference, not just here locally, not across the city, not across the nation, but across the globe. Keep watching, stay focused. We appreciate you. God bless you.